So the supplies that we need are reel oil, here we're using pen, and we'll also need pen grease. We will need a bunch of Q-tips. These will be used for cleaning and also for oil. And last but not least, we'll need a bowl of just soapy water.
Hello, this is Matt with InReel. My daughter introduced what we're doing today. We're basically going to go through the process of cleaning and lubricating some reels. So we're going to start off with the spinning reel. First thing you want to do, you can go one of two routes. You can take the actual reel off itself first, or you can do the handle first. Let's go ahead and do the reel. So they all have this end right there that you can spin off. And it will seem like it spins for an eternity, but it will eventually make it off. And once you get there, just set that piece aside and your spool should come right off. And you will see a couple little gears sitting down here. So what you're gonna do is just take one of your Q-tips and you're just gonna go through here and just clean up. And you wanna be very thorough. There will be a flat side and a side for screwing onto it. And you want to try and hit everything. And if possible, get underneath there as well. And you'll see some pretty good grease or something there. And then you want to go back over it again, but this time you're going to use the other side of the Q-tip or a different one because now you want to dry it. You never want to leave water on these, you don't want them to rust. So the first pass is just to get that grease and moss and anything else you might have on there off. And then the second pass is to dry it and clean up the rest. And as you can see, there's a pretty good amount still there. So once you get that finished, next thing you're going to do is you're going to use your oil. And some people use all-purpose oil. I tend to use the specific oil that's designed for reels. But I just put 1 drop on the main shaft and 1 drop on the gear. And then I'll take the Q-tip and run it up and down. Make sure I get full coverage. Anywhere where there's contact points. And I may want to put a little bit more in here, another drop. So I'm just spreading that. You don't want too much. You want to have enough to lubricate it, but not so much that it seizes everything up and collects a bunch of dust. And then once you have that piece cleaned up, then you can look inside your actual reel itself. In my case, there's a little bit of dust, nothing major in here. So I'm just gonna give that a quick clean through here. Same on top. Nothing major going on there. And I will do 1 drop on top, right near the opening. Spread that around. And then on the bottom, I will do the same thing. And what this is doing is helping it lubricate as it goes through when you put it back on the spindle. And then you're just gonna go ahead and take your spindle. You'll see that it's kind of squared off, if you can see that. Yeah, part of it's squared off and part of it's round, so you just wanna line that up. When you put it back on, you'll see on top here. See how it's kind of squared? Yep. So put that on there. Grab your main top piece that we had from before. And sometimes I'll put a drop of oil right on the top, right there, for that piece to spin down on. If it's dirty, clean it, but mine is pretty clean right now. I'm just gonna screw this back on clockwise until it's a little bit snug again. All right, so that's been lubricated. So now let's turn our attention to the handle. So in this case, the handle can be on the right side or left side, depends on how you set it up. But either way, find the side that has the screw and you're just gonna twist that off. And be careful as you twist it off, you may find washers, little plastic pieces, and sometimes little star washers. And you don't want to lose any of that stuff. So make sure you are careful when you get to the final stage. See, for example, like that right there. You can see the little star washer barely hanging on. And then you're going to pull, this should come straight out of the side. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean with some more soapy water on a Q-tip. We're going to clean inside here and run it. If you can get it through, you want to go straight through that whole thing. And do both sides. This one's pretty dirty on this side. You can see all that right there. So I'm just gonna clean this out pretty thoroughly. And then flip it over, use the other dry side to go back through. Make sure you get all the moisture out of there. We don't want any rusting. All right, and then let's turn our attention now to the screw. And on this case, it doesn't look terrible, but I'm just gonna give it a quick wipe down here. Basically what you're doing is you're just getting any excess grease or dirt, or if you were unlucky enough, like me, to drop yours into the water, any moss or anything else that was floating in the water. And then when you grab your handle, there's two parts you want to clean. You have the joint here, and then you have the main shaft there. You want to clean both thoroughly, get off any old grease, dirt, moss, sludge. And see, I have a little, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but I have a tiny little bit of rust starting. So it's a good thing I'm getting in here and getting this relubricated. In all honesty, I don't clean my cheaper tackle. I don't clean too often. Usually my loose and my nicer ones I'll do regularly, but these are the ones I might do once a year. All right, and then take the dry side. Again, clean up all the moisture from cleaning with the soapy water. Just hit it pretty thoroughly. And now that we've gotten everything cleaned up, I mean, you know how dirty yours is, but in my case, it's not terrible. If you, for example, had a bunch of mud and thick moss and things entwined and wrapped around everything, you may need to actually take this and soak it in the water and then scrub it and things like that. But once you get it down to where it's just clean like this, then obviously you're gonna go ahead and oil it. So we're gonna put a drop of oil on the screw and this little bearing right here, or this little washer here, and spread that around. Now, a lot of people will ask, how do I know when to use grease and how do I know when to use oil? The answer that I've seen in general, because I had the same question, is you basically want to use oil on any joints and anything that might get water contact to help protect it. You're going to use grease on gears. So anytime you're dealing with the heavy gears on the inside of either the handle or the main mechanism in baitcasters and whatnot, that's when you want to use your grease. I'll post a picture here that kind of shows the main areas that you want to hit on different kind of baitcaster or spinning. All right, now that we've gotten that stuff lubed, we are also going to put one drop on the inside of this for when the reel goes back in. And we'll spread that around a little bit on each side. Add one more here. And then depending on how you reel, in our case, we go left-handed. So you're gonna insert it back in and make sure you have all your bearings and everything in the proper order as how you took them out. And then you're just going to screw this back on. And sometimes it's not always easy, but yeah, let's get this screwed on here. make sure it's snug. Now that's lubricated. The only other thing that I would recommend is to lubricate these joints here on each side of the bail. And then if need be, if it's really bad, then you'll take out these screws on each side and lubricate in between here as well. But mine looks pretty good. You can put a drop on this toggle here if need be. Mine's pretty seized up, so, and then just work it back and forth. Put one drop right here, right where this connects to the handle. And maybe on the back as well. And some of these will have a screw that shows down here, or like in my case, it looks more like it was flush down there. You can put one drop there as well, and just work it in a little bit. Give it a spin. So all you're basically doing is you're hitting all the joints with oil, and anything like this toggle that will make it a little bit easier for you to spin and do the functions that you need to do. And that one's good to go. So next we're going to focus on this Bass Pro Shops Baitcaster. A lot of them are very similar in the way that they come apart and function. But first thing you want to do is take off your side plates. In this case, it has a little pull here, and then this side plate will twist off. And you see you have your magnetic brakes inside there. Set that aside. Your spool will come out next. Go ahead and set that aside as well. And what you're looking for here is anything that's built up inside the cavity of this. In this case, it's not too bad, but it could still use a little wipe down. So I'm gonna use a wash rag, and I'm just gonna hit everything on the outside and what I can reach on the inside. So there's nothing major that you can damage or hurt, but just wipe it down, get all the moss, any type of buildup that's on there. You just want to wipe that off. My luge that I did earlier was so bad I had to completely disassemble it. I even had to take off the worm guide and everything. But this one is not too bad. So we'll go through what you would typically do. All right, so I've done the first wipe down. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a Q-tip in the water again, and I'm gonna go inside here, and we're going to hit any spots that have contact with the reel, and the spool, I should say. And then take the other side dry. Go back through, get all that moisture off of there, and any dirt or anything that was lifted up. Not too bad, but it's there. And then we're gonna go to the spool itself. Same thing. We're gonna wipe down all the surfaces, wipe down the bearings. With a new one, new Q-tip, we're going to dry it off because we don't want any rust. And a lot of people will take the fishing line off of here for good reason, as you can see, it gets in the way. And then you have your brake system. Get some more soapy water, and you're gonna clean it up. This isn't too bad, but any contact surfaces, the magnets themselves, the bearing, you wanna hit all of it. You don't wanna miss anything. And depending on how bad the actual clicker is, you may need to do that as well. But again, dry it off. Dry off the bearing, dry off the magnets, dry off the rim and the outside. And then you're gonna take a drop of oil and you're gonna put it right on the bearing. Pretty decent sized one, and one right where the magnet strip is here, and one right on this edge. And you're gonna take Q-tip and just spread it around. And then you're going to put a drop of oil here, and you're gonna hit this gear, this bearing down here, and this post. Spread it around. Again, you don't want to put too much. You just want enough that you can see the shine on it. You do not want it dripping off. And then one drop on this side, right on the post. Spread that around. And then right inside there, I'm not sure if you can see it all the way or not, but you have your gear right there that meets up with your spool. You're gonna put one drop down there, spread that around, and in most cases it'll be a copper or brass gear. And you're just gonna spread a little bit of oil on the inside of here as well. And then your spool is gonna drop right back in, long side first. And then once that drops in place, make sure you don't have fishing line in the way like I do. And then you're going to put your brake face back on. In my case, it just slides on and twists. And that piece is good to go. On this side, you're gonna have your adjustment here, this knob. As you turn it, it's gonna get more and more difficult to turn one way, and the other way it'll come completely off. So you have these two pieces here now. So again, you're gonna get your soapy water and just give it a quick bath here and the inside of the cap. Oh, it's pretty dirty. And then get another one. Always make sure you have dry ones around so you can get all the moisture out of here. Get that bearing dry. And then we're gonna put one drop of oil right on that bearing. Then you're gonna spread that around using a Q-tip. And I also usually spread it around on the threads inside there for the screws. And then this will just screw right back on. Be careful, do not cross thread these parts. You will regret it. All right, and then you're gonna put one drop where each of these meets the handle. And then just spin it. Same here, put one drop, spin it, let it work in there a little bit. And then the other area that a lot of people work on is the worm guide. So it's the piece where as this spins, you can see that metal there that's actually spinning and pushing the guide back and forth. So in my case, mine actually has grease on it. Some of them will have oil. Some manufacturers will recommend oil and some will recommend grease. Typically, to me, it doesn't make a big difference one way or another. Sometimes the grease can make it feel a little bit more bound, a little bit harder to spin since it's catching in that thicker liquid. A lot of people swear by using oil there. But in my case, since it already has grease, I'm gonna go ahead and get my grease out. And make sure you don't have too much. As you can see, this goes way overboard when you first pull it out. And I'm just going to wipe a tiny bit on one side, and then I'll spin the reel just to get enough to the other side. And then I'll add a little bit more on that side as well. And then spin it in. Work it back and forth. You'll see that guide going left and right. That's how you know it's spreading it. Now, in your case, if your worm guide is extremely dirty, you would do the same thing. You would just dip in your water there and just wipe it down, spin it a little bit, wipe it down, spin it a little bit more, wipe it down until it's clean, right? So you're gonna hit this metal piece until it's nice and clean, and then after that, then you can add oil or grease. In my case, it's very, very clean. So this is a somewhat newer reel that I haven't used much at all. So everything's nice and smooth. Everything's functioning as it should. One more thing I wanted to cover with baitcasters, many of them, they'll have this port. And a lot of people call it the oil port, and I believe some of the documentation calls it the oil port. So what it is it gives you access, if I can get it off of here, it'll give you access to the gears so that you can grease them or oil them. Let's see if I can get this off here. There we go. And if you look in there, I don't know if you can see it or not, but you have the gear, the large gear right there on the edge. And if you look further inside, you can see the other smaller gears. So what I do is I put one drop right in the middle of the hole that goes past the big gear and drops onto the little ones. Okay, so there's one it hit. Now I'm going to spin to let that lubricate. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my gear lube or grease, whatever you want to call it there. And it's a little tricky to hold, but I'll basically hold it here, touching the gear, and then spin. And what it's doing is it's wiping grease on that gear as I'm spinning. And as you can see, there's grease in the opening. So you'll take a Q-tip, wipe off the excess, and then just keep working it in, keep spinning it. And what this does is there's another couple gears inside that are also getting lubricated by this. Now, if you really need to break your reel down and clean inside of here, where you take all this off, we can do a later video for that, but this would be your basic, semi-monthly or after a big tournament lubrication routine and cleaning. But you can take this all the way down to individual springs and gears and clean it that way as well, although that's not required as often. Typically you do that maybe once a year. So as of right now, this baitcaster is good to go.